Life is full of unpredictability. The more you think you know how life is going to go, it feels like the more things get messed up. Things get changed, they get tossed and turned. And you can see this in your daily life. Like how many times have you been going somewhere like, yes, I'm going to be on time. And then there's an accident on I-25 because there's always an accident on I-25. And now you're 10 minutes late. Right? Or how many times everything's going well, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, dinner burns, and now this beautiful meal that you had prepared is chalky and tasteless. And on a bigger scale, how many times you're going along, things are fine, and all of a sudden you get hit with an unexpected car bill, and you're like, geez, I don't know where I'm going to pay for, how I'm going to pay for this. I didn't see this coming. Or on an even bigger scale, how many times in life do we have situations that just blindside us, they just hit us, and it just feels like it's one thing after another. All of a sudden, somebody gets a health diagnosis they weren't expecting. Somebody gets laid off from their job, and all of a sudden has no idea how they're going to make ends meet or have food or shelter, how they're going to pay the bills. Or in the most extreme cases, death strikes. Sometimes we think we see it coming, and sometimes it comes unexpected. But in this lifetime, life is full of unpredictability. We can't control it, which is hard because as people, we would love to control things. We like when things are in our control. We like when we can hold it and shape it and mold it and say, this is what it is. But most of the time, life is not like that. And so one of the best pictures for this, one of the best images that you can have for the uncontrollability of life is water. Now, it seems counterintuitive, right? Because I drink water all the time. I keep it in my glass. I do spill on myself some. Most people, I'm hoping you're pretty good at drinking water. We see it all the time, and yet water is this picture of something that's hard to control. Even on a small scale, right? Have you ever tried to cup water for a while? Like, how long can you hold it before it starts dripping out the bottom? Like, I swear, like, this should be a pretty tight seal. But on a much bigger scale, you look at rivers, and you look at seas, and you look at the ocean. Who can control that? This is why people across time, place, different cultures have viewed the ocean and the seas as these pictures of uncontrollability, of chaos, of just this insurmountable force that we can't control. This is crazy because even in today's technology, right, we can send rovers to Mars, we can send men to the moon, but the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association says, do you know what % of the ocean we've explored? Any guesses? Heard 10, 4 is really close, 5%. Think of all the technology we have. How much of the ocean have we seen? We've seen 5% of it. This is why if you look at old maps, I love it, because they're always like at the end, there's always like the sea, and there's just like a sea monster drawn in there. Because it's just like, what's out there? And that's what's so terrifying. This is why so many cultures, you have these stories and these images of sea creatures, because if it was there, you wouldn't know. And if it's not there, you still don't really know. The ocean is this picture of unknown and chaos and uncontrollability. This is a theme that the scriptures pick up on. From the very beginning, when Genesis is trying to describe what is the world like before God makes stuff, it said it was void and dark, and there was a spirit over the waters. So the picture of nothingness still has this picture of just dark, void water splashing around. And then this is crazy. So when we're told that God made birds to fill the air, we're told that he made land animals to crawl around on the ground. We're told for the seas, he made all of the things that swim and swim around in the water, and the great sea creatures. So there's the water creatures and the great ones. Whales, sharks, I don't know, man, but the picture is that is a scary place. And so if you've ever swam in a big body of water, you know this too, because when you're in water, you're not in control. You can do things to try and stay afloat, but the waves, the current, how many times does an undertow pull you along? It's unpredictable. How many times have you seen a movie where somebody is in the ocean and they come up for a gasp of breath and all of a sudden right then another wave crashes upon them? We can't control water. We can try our best to redirect it, but water in of itself is uncontrollable, it's chaotic, it's all over the place. This is actually one of the points that God makes in the scriptures when he's talking to his servant Job. So Job is a good, righteous man. He does what's pleasing in God's sight. And then all sort of chaotic things happen. Not because of his own fault. It's just the devil comes and the devil takes his property, his land. He takes his children, takes his health. And at one point at the end of Job, Job's talking to God, and God's telling Job, there's so much going on that you can't see. And one of the examples he gives, he said, were you there when I made the seas? When I told them, thus far you shall go and no farther? Right? That's a God thing. Have you ever been on the beach and tried to tell a wave, all right, wave, stop right here. You're just going to get spat out onto the shore. So water is this picture for chaos. It's this picture for uncontrollability that only God has control over, and we as people don't. Which is why when people talk about what they're going through, often they'll use images like waves and storms, crashing over, pulled under. Because there's something very real and tangible about that experience that feels like you're in water, where there's no solid footing, where there's no control. So today what we're going to be looking at is how we as humans, we don't have control over the water. We don't have control over the chaos in our life. But there's one who does. What does that mean for us, and what does that mean for how we help others? That's what we're going to be looking at today. So to help us do this, we're going to go to a very, if you grew up in the church or you're familiar with Christian stories, a very common story where Jesus is going to show his control over the waters. This is in Matthew chapter 14. So Jesus comes, right, this God-man who comes onto the scene, and all of a sudden he starts doing things that normal people don't, right? So people don't have control over things. When I'm sick, I can't say, be clean to myself, and I'm clean. If I break a leg, I can't say, be healed, and it heals. But Jesus is doing this kind of stuff, and he's healing, and he seems to have control in a way that other people don't. Even the way he teaches, one of the things that's said is that he teaches as one with authority versus the other people who are just teaching as interpretation. So there's something about the way that this guy speaks that's different. Something in the way that this guy has control over the world that is different. So Jesus, right after he is going to feed a bunch of people, do this miraculous work where he takes a little bit of food and feeds a bunch of people, he's then going to do something miraculous for his disciples. So this is in Matthew 14. Immediately he, that is Jesus, made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. All right, so Jesus, he feeds this crowd. He says, disciples, we'll go over to the other side. You guys start sailing. I'll meet you guys over there. I'm going to go pray by himself. And you imagine the experience of the disciples for a moment. So these are people who, again, they see this guy with their own eyes, this guy who's doing things nobody else does. They deal with their own chaotic life, right? The disciples, we don't always get to know a ton about their background, but we do know they're human. So they got their own family challenges, their own health challenges, their own challenges when it comes to who they are and the world they're in. And then this Jesus comes along and he says, follow me. And they say, okay. And they're following him along. He's doing all these miraculous signs. And what the disciples are getting in his ministry is a glimpse of something different, right? Of somebody different. So here, they're doing exactly what Jesus tells them, though. Go start sailing. And what does it get them? Well, they're in this boat that's now being beaten by the waves. So they're being tossed to and fro by the wind and the waves. And we're told this. And in the fourth watch of the night, so it's pretty late. We're talking like 3 a.m. or so. He came to them walking on the sea. So he's walking on the sea. So right there. What happens when most people are in the sea? You're tossed to and fro. What happens when Jesus is in the sea? He walks on it. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, it is a ghost. And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them saying, take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid. And it kind of makes sense from the disciple standpoint. If you know, like I know how people work. They sink in water, right? And all of a sudden you saw something that seems to be walking on the water, like it's as if it's floating. So they just assume this is a ghost, this is a spirit. What is this? But Jesus calms them and says, take heart, it is I. Take heart, it's me. Do not be afraid. And then you have this very famous moment. And Peter answered him, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. He said, come. So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. But Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" To this moment where Peter sees Jesus on the water and Jesus says, "Hey, take heart, don't worry, it's me." And Peter, with this bold confidence that I don't know if I would have, says, "Jesus, if it's you, tell me to go on the water and then I can come to you." So Jesus actually honors this. He says, "Come." So Peter's looking at Jesus and he starts walking. But then what happens? He starts to see, not Jesus, but he sees the wind. And he was afraid and he begins to sink. And he cries out, maybe one of the shortest prayers in the whole Bible, "Lord, save me." 3 words. "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus reaches out this sure, stable hand, grabs a hold of him, rescues his life, and asks him, "Why did you doubt?" Then we're told this, and when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. And in the boat, those in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." So what's remarkable is in this picture is these disciples tossed to and fro in the wind and by the waves, on the sea, out of control. Their own life is at risk. All of a sudden, Jesus comes, and he's not sunk in the water. He's not tossed by it. He walks over it. He's on top of it. And he actually, then in a moment when Peter is out there and it starts sinking, he offers stability by reaching out with his own hand and grabbing hold of Peter and rescuing his life. And so the disciples rightfully see, right, the wind at that point, when Jesus gets in the boat, everything stops. Right? Who can control the water? Who tells the water, "Here's how far you go"? God can. And all of a sudden, Jesus in this moment gets in the boat and the water stops. He listens to him. And so the people in the boat rightfully understand this is not a regular guy. They respond by saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." They worship him and praise him. Because who gets to tell the water what to do? Only God. People don't do that. You can try. It doesn't work well. And so in this moment, the disciples get a picture of this man who is also God, who actually has control over all the things that we can't control. Because this wind and the water, they recognized Jesus' voice. It was the same voice that said, "Separate, water, go over here. Water, here's how far you get to come." And so when Jesus speaks in this moment, the water hears it and says, "Oh, I know that voice. I listen to that voice." And so if the waters listen to Jesus, then how much else, everything else in life, the chaos, the uncertainty, the challenges, those things that feel like wave after wave, tossing and throwing us, and we just feel like we're at its mercy, Jesus speaks, and those things have to listen. In the midst of the tossing, Jesus gets to say, "Fear not, take heart, it's me." These disciples, this is one of those moments they're going to get a glimpse of this man who is the Son of God, who has control. But one of the remarkable things, it's not, pun intended, smooth sailing from here. Because as they go forward, not everything is rainbow and sunshines. Because this man who embodies control over chaos and stability and salvation, remarkably, the world is still filled with chaos, and it does not like this guy. Jesus steps into a chaotic world, and the world doesn't want him there. And so what the disciples are going to see is you're going to have all sorts of pushback. You're going to have these leaders who should be celebrating and praising Jesus and holding him up and saying, "Look at this guy." Instead, they're going to start blaspheming him and slandering him. They're going to start attacking him. They're going to start unsettling things, challenging him, accusing him, and anyone who's with him, they're going to challenge them too. This Jesus stepping into the chaos, things get more and more unstable, and Jesus is going to go and confront them. He's going to challenge them. He's going to go to the temple and say, "How you have been doing this, you've taken what's meant to be this place for people to come and have a relationship with the one true living God. You have turned it into this den of robbers where you're taking advantage of people and you're hurting people." And the leaders don't like that, and the world doesn't like that, and the political leaders don't like that because he's unsettling things. And so Jesus is in the midst of this storm that just keeps building and building and building. And pretty soon, Jesus' own follower is going to turn him over. He's going to betray him, and he's going to hand him over to the authorities. And in that moment, things feel less and less stable. And all of a sudden, Jesus' disciples who felt so sure and solid in that boat and said, "Oh, this is truly the Son of God," all of a sudden, they are running, they are hiding, they are fleeing, they're denying this Jesus. Sorry for getting motion sick. It's kind of intentional. The disciples, they're scattered, they're disoriented, and all of a sudden, it's hard to see Jesus, and it's easy to see all the chaos, and so they're saying, I don't know that guy, and they're running, and they're hiding, they're terrified. Jesus himself, he's on trial, this sham trial where people are throwing, and they're hitting him and smacking him, sticking thorns into his skull, and he's bleeding. And on the moment where he is crucified, it feels like in that time that the whole world, all of the chaos, all of the uncontrollability has swallowed him up. Like a vortex in the middle of the ocean, this Jesus who seemed to rise above and stand on the water seems to be sucked down to the depths to be never seen again. That's what happened on Good Friday. And this is why the disciples, they're terrified. They run. What to make of this? We thought this was the one. We thought this was the one to bring peace and unity and stability. And then he died. And he was gone in the depths where you can't see. It's the thing about the ocean that's so terrifying. You look down and you can't see the bottom, and Christ was nowhere to be seen because he was in the depths of death itself. And then on Easter morning, he popped up and showed one life-changing fact, that truly he is the Son of God. You see, in order for Jesus to bring about this control over all of the chaos, he was going to have to be swallowed by it whole. Like a vortex in the ocean, Jesus was sucked down to the depths of hell. But he did so that by being swallowed by death, he might swallow death by victory. And he rose back up to the surface and showed that not even death has control over him. And once again, he stood above the waters, triumphant and victorious, so that all who believe in him might have a sure hand in the midst of every storm, of every wind and wave that's crashing along. Now in this lifetime, there's times where Jesus says, I need you to go over there, and you're still going to encounter storms and waves. So what does Jesus offer in this lifetime? Because he is the Son of God who rose and conquered death. I want to highlight two things. First off, what Jesus offers is not chaotic. The world is chaotic, the world is uncontrolled, but Jesus offers control, not in our ability, but in his. He offers stillness. This is a very famous psalm for many of us. I just want to read a couple verses, but this is Psalm 23. Notice the language here. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside, what kind of waters? Still waters. Waters you can see the bottom, waters that you can drink from and be refreshed in, you can splash and you can play in, and there's no danger. There's no tidal wave to take you away, there's no undertow. They're still. You can enjoy them. Which is why 2 verses later, David can write this, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Because the same Jesus who speaks and the waters listen is with us no matter what valley, no matter what sea that we're going through, he's there. And the world has to listen to his voice because it's the voice that made this world. It's the voice that redeemed it. It's the voice that still reigns in control. So Jesus offers us not chaos, but still waters. So whenever we're going through chaotic situations and circumstances, whenever we just feel like it's one wave after another, we come to Jesus and ask him to still things. And that doesn't mean that everything's just going to go away in a moment, but what it means is that Jesus is going to reach down with a sturdy and firm hand and hold us in the midst of it. He's going to prevent us from being sucked down into that ocean, sucked into the sea. So Jesus offers us still waters and a sturdy hand. But in this lifetime, he's also offered us people to be those hands. One thing, if you've ever noticed this, if you ever look at the ceiling of this place, frequently when people design church architecture, one of the things they'll do with the ceilings of the sanctuary is they'll design it to look like the bottom side of a boat. From very early on, one of the pictures that people had for the Christian church, of what does it mean for this group of people, what are we in this world, is we're an ark, we're a boat, we're a ship. And in this life there are seas that toss us to and fro, but we are on a ship that will carry us to the other side. When you recall the story of Noah, those waters were destructive and they were violent, but God provided a safe path. As Jake talked about a few weeks ago, he provided a way. And so in this lifetime, we go through things. It is not just me being tossed to and fro. We are on a ship together. So when one of us is getting sucked under, someone else can offer that hand keeping us from going under in the chaos. Reaching down with a word, with just our presence, with a warm embrace, whatever it might be. We don't have to be tossed to and fro because we are on this ship that is the Christian church, sailing to a destination. And the destination is beautiful and good, and God gives us a picture of what this looks like at the very end of the Bible. So in Revelation, you have this picture of what the world is going to be like when Jesus returns. So in chapter 21 of Revelation, this is this beautiful picture. So after we've talked about Satan being conquered and and sin is gone, John is given this picture of something new. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. So John sees this new heaven and new earth. So right now we have the heavens and the earth. It's going to be gone. There's going to be a new one. And can you guess what the first detail that John gets to see about this new heavens and the new earth is? The first detail. And the sea was no more. No more sea. Now, if you love the ocean, don't fear. It's not the point. The point is that this chaos, this uncontrollability, this fear, this being tossed is gone. This picture, this emblem of what it means to have this uncontrollable world ceases. Instead, what we're told is there's a river flowing from Jesus' own throne. It's a river of life that people can drink from and live. Still waters. But the sea, this chaos, this violent attack on stability and the world is gone. No more flooding, no more hurricanes, no more nothing. Peaceful, good, controlled. And the picture of what this looks like, to expand, we're told this by John. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, "Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God." And then take note of this verse. "He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away." So what does it look like for there to be no more sea? Every tear is wiped away. No more mourning, no more crying. Death shall be no more. There's no more pain. All of those chaotic things that hit us, whether we're expecting it or not, the waves of life are gone. And we have a solid foundation in Jesus where we can drink from still waters and not have to fear what might come for eternity. So in the meantime, what does it mean for Jesus to have control over the waters? I want you just to remember two things. When you're going through chaotic times, you can't find footing on your own. It's like being in the middle of the ocean and trying to touch the bottom. You're not going to find it. And so you need to call out to the one with the sturdy hand. You need to call it to Jesus, who can tell those waters to cease. So call to him, both in prayer and in the form of his people on this ark with one another, but call to him. And then secondly, we, as fellow voyagers on this ship, need to look out for those who are going overboard. It's so easy when we see the winds, when we look at the winds, to focus on how it's affecting us, that we can very easily miss those who are falling in, who are being sucked under by an undertow. And so to just stop and take a mental note, sometime write down everybody in your circle, and once in a while just go through that and just think, how is this person doing? Because you never know when that person might need somebody to reach out. Because they might be silently doggy paddling and flailing, and they need somebody just to reach down and grab hold of them and say, "I got you." We are not in this voyage alone. And there is a day when the sea will be gone and all the waters will be still and life-giving. Until then, may we take hold of the hand of Christ who commands the waters. May we reach down with that same love and hold on to one another until this voyage is complete. We do this in Jesus' name. Amen.